Are you yielding the floor?
Yeah.
Mr. Person?
I'd like to ask Dr. Conway if she knows, or if Mrs. Buell is here, how many students were in Talc when we closed it?
I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Roughly.
Between 17 and 25, I forgot what.
Yeah, I'd say at the actual time it was around 15. Yeah.
So we closed the school that affected 15 kids.
We relocated.
I get that, but I'm saying, Mr. Kemp was saying that this is something that we did. We talked about reconfiguring. We stepped back from it. We yielded to the community because they didn't want it.
Yeah.
We are in the bottom 30, whether we like it or not. That's where we're at. So trying to find ways other than same old isn't such a bad idea. It's a study. It's getting information. I don't see why it hurts us. And one more thing I'd like to address Mr. Nicholson's comment through the chair. Mr. Picaro and Mrs. Buell find a lot more money this year in Medicaid reimbursement. Town figured 40 grand roughly, and we brought in 200 and...
To the chair projected.
200,000?
Projecting about 200,000.
So we're making them more money. We're finding, our administration is finding those pockets of money that the town wasn't even expecting. So that's all I was saying, is we're going through the effort. We're not getting any of it back. Thank you.
Other discussion? I wanted to give everybody a chance for a second time before I go to a third. Ken?
If a feasibility study passes, so be it. It isn't going to address our budget problem, which we have in front of us. Might make you feel good that we're going to look at something, whatever that might be. I don't know what these answers will be. But we have a $1,500,000 problem, and a feasibility study isn't going to solve that.
I don't have the answers either, but could I just suggest that rather than starting to pick apart our budget in small ways, that it might be an option to see what that study returns to us. I'm not suggesting that it's the answer. I'm suggesting that we should at least consider it as a possibility. When we talked about reconfiguring, Dr. Conway assured us that that could happen in a very short period of time. So I'm assuming, please correct me, that this kind of redistribution could happen in a very short time if the board chose to take action. So for you to suggest, Mr. Kemp, that this will not impact our budget, I don't think is accurate, nor do I think that my assumption that it will is accurate. I'm simply asking for the information so that we can see if it has an impact on the budget that may work to all of our advantage, rather than picking apart our that deficit by hacking into staffing and technology that we made a commitment to. I'm not willing to do that. I think it's wrong. I think we go backwards. We don't go forward.
Any further dialogue?
I've been listening, and I do believe that bringing students, special ed students, back to Vernon is a very good idea. But we've been put in a position where we need to make decisions for the next budget season. Because of setting something up like that, we might not actually see the savings right off the bat, because there's going to be startup expenses. I'm just projecting and not saying that that is a definite. There's startup expenses, there's training, there's all kinds of things that would have to be put in place that are going to cost us money before we can realize a profit or to get tuition costs in. So that won't fix the current problem right this minute. Not saying that it's not a wonderful idea to bring our special ed students back into our community and bringing possibly others from outside our community in to provide service for them. But I'm thinking to myself, startup costs, training costs, you need special equipment and things like that. that's going to actually probably add to our budget, moving things, everything else. Those kinds of things are going to add to our budget before we can realize any kind of savings. So I'm thinking to myself, we still have a job to do. We still have to make some decisions. And this is something, yes, it will definitely put more money into our budget in the future. Possibly, if the study comes out that it will. But we still have a job to do. And we still have to make some decisions. And I know you probably feel that's not thinking outside of the box. But thinking outside of the box is not a 2-week process. It's something that has to change over time. Yes, I do think it's a good thing, but no, I don't think we should rush into something right this minute. I think it does take time to get everything in place and do it right. And I hope that if we take a little extra time, it will be done right.
I simply repeat that I was never suggesting action about, it's just a feasibility study.
The motion
And
on the floor is a
and-
feasibility study.
And for any of us to assume that we have the answers to those questions, your suggestions may be on the money, Laura, but you don't know as well as I don't know. It's just asking the superintendent to answer the question. Why are we afraid to ask the questions and get the answers? It's not an action, it's a study. I don't understand what the fear is.
Mr. Kemp?
Really, there's no real fear here, Michelle. We're trying to get through a budget problem here at this particular point in time, and your point could have been made months ago, but your timing is awful. Here we are trying to solve a $1.5 million problem at this late stage, and you've had 2 years since you've been on the Board of Ed to come up with this kind of a sweeping recommendation of a study, and you haven't done it. And now at this time when we've got to deal with this before it goes to referendum, you want to have us do this all-encompassing study that puts staff to work full-time on, which I'm sure it would take. Or I said the timing is horrible, and I can't support it.
Bush.
I didn't say it wasn't something to explore. I just didn't want it to take our focus away from what our job is right now, is to make decisions on this current budget. 2 weeks from now, that's 2 weeks that we would have less to make our decisions.
The motion on the floor is not preventing us from taking any additional action tonight, and I'm going to bring that motion to a vote so that we can move along.
Point of order. The motion is what?
The motion on the floor is to have a feasibility study.
Yeah. What about taking action?
It's not preventing us from taking any further
I
action
didn't hear you
tonight. We're going to move along
Thank you.
with this evening. We're going to take a vote on this motion that's on the floor right now, and then we'll move on. Okay? So by a show of hands, all in favor? And those opposed? So I show 2 opposed. Motion does carry to do a feasibility study. Mr. Nicholson, you have...
Okay. We've been at this meeting about an hour, and we haven't addressed the point of being here tonight. We knew weeks ago that the mayor sent back our proposed budget with cuts. Shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that the council supported that. We knew this. If you somehow thought different, I appreciate your optimism. I'm a realist. The point of being here tonight is to address budget cuts to get in line. And dragging it out for another few weeks is just going to make it more difficult. The administration has done a great job coming up with cuts. And yes, cuts hurt, but that's reality. If you lose your job, your income goes down, you have to make cuts. It's just the way life is. And this meeting was called on very short notice, and some of us do have other obligations outside Board of Ed. So I'm going to make a motion for some items I feel that we can cut from the proposed expenditures. First would be a assistant principal position at Vernon Middle School. That would be $125,805.
Excuse me.
Can you say that again, please?
Were you referring to items on this list here?
No, these additional items.
I understand it now. Okay.
How much was it?
125,805.
And are you making that in the form of a motion?
I'm making several items in one motion. Assistant principal position at Rockwell High School. Again, these are two schools that had much larger populations in the past. And I don't feel we need to have two assistant principals. So at Rockwell High School, $113,205. The PD 360 Teacher Evaluation Management System for $83,965.
Point of clarification, I think that 80,000 included two pieces, that the PD was just 45,000, it was not 80,000.
I read it off the form and it was 85,000. So that can be clear.
Can you clarify that?
Thank you. Yeah, PD 360, it's 49,000 for the professional development piece, and the rest is for a mandatory evaluation. We haven't bought it yet, but what we're going to do to evaluate teachers. It's got to be online. The state's going to upload data to us. We have to.
And we can't find a way to do that without spending $45,000.
We've got to buy a new system to do that. We've got to buy.
So then it's whatever the difference is.
So that would be 49,000.
49,000. And the last would be, and I've talked to students, I've talked to teachers, smart boards are not used as a magic tool that some people think they are. So I propose cutting the additional 6 smart boards for additional savings of $22,020. So I appreciate a second.
So I have a motion to cut an assistant principal at VCMS, an assistant principal at Rockwell High School, reduce PD 360 $49,000, and reduce smart boards by $22,000. Is that correct on the motion?
That's correct.
And is there a second?
I'm going to second it because I think board members should be heard.
I have a motion and a second. Is there anybody who wishes to? Mrs. Arndt.
I'd like to move to divide the question because I'm not comfortable at all voting on this in a group, so I move to divide the question.
Second.
A motion to divide and a second into
That's not
4 pieces. We're going to bring that to a vote. All in favor of dividing the question? And that's unanimous.
No,
No. Opposed?
Yes.
1 opposed, sorry.
I just hope we can get this done without dragging it out for another hour.
Okay, so we'll start with the assistant principal.
We could have done this weeks ago. We all know that.
Excuse me, we're holding, sure we maintain our decorum. You were speaking to the motion, did you yield the floor?
Yes.
We have the assistant principal at VCMS up for debate at this point in time. Does anybody wish to speak to that motion? Mr. Percy.
Yeah, interesting idea here. Not to get too in-depth, but this week there was an altercation outside the school as the students were being let out. And it took 2 assistant principals to break up 2 7th graders. Not sure if Mr. Kane was even in the building. Don't know. I don't think this is a good idea, so I cannot support it.
Other discussion? Mrs. Fisher?
I just want to say that during our budget workshops in January, I had made the suggestion of looking into cutting one of the assistant principals and having half-time assistant principals at both schools. And administration came back to us and said that we have too many behavior problems for that to be in their mind.
Mr. Nicholson.
I'm just trying to do our job. And constantly getting, we can't. It's not going to solve our problem. We have cuts to make. Let's be serious about it and do it, or stop wasting everybody's time.
Mr. Kemp.
Well, there's a list here that we have been provided by staff who've gone through. Now, it's not that I'm opposed to you making a motion here, but I would have thought that we would have gone through what was offered up to us here for consideration and then see where we ended up, and then